Okay, let's dive right into this. We are about to get into a really mind-bending idea from cognitive neuroscience, and it gets right to the core of who you think you are. What if I told you that the you inside your head, that constant companion you've had your whole life, is actually an illusion? Yeah, I know, it's a pretty jarring statement. It sounds like something you'd hear in a late-night philosophy class. But here's the thing. This is a conclusion coming directly from modern brain science. And this is the central mystery we're going to unpack together. If that constant I doesn't really exist, then what are we? So you got this clash, right? On one side, there's your gut feeling, that deep, intuitive sense that you're a single, solid person. The same you who went to sleep last night and woke up this morning. But then on the other side, you have what science is telling us, and it suggests that what we call you isn't a static thing at all. It's a constantly evolving story, a narrative. Okay, so if our sense of self is a story, that leads to a pretty logical question, doesn't it? Who's the author? To really understand this whole illusion, we've got to go inside the brain and meet the part of us that's in charge of writing the epic tale of me. Scientists give it a few names, like the interpreter, but let's just call it the narrative center. And its job is absolutely incredible. Think of it like a master editor, taking all the chaotic, disconnected bits and pieces of your experience, sights, sounds, thoughts, memories, and just weaving them together into the single, coherent story you experience as your life. So how does it pull this off? Well, first, your brain is just absorbing a fire hose of data from the world around you. Then, it pulls up a bunch of scattered memories to give all that new data some context. Third, and this is where the real magic happens, it stitches it all together, filling in the gaps to create a smooth plot. And finally, it presents this finished story to your consciousness as you. And get this is happening right now, this very second.
Once you really get your head around this storyteller, it forces a huge mental shift. We kind of have to stop thinking of ourselves as a thing, like a static object, and start seeing it as a process. You aren't a statue. You're more like a continuous active creation.
And this brings us to this really powerful idea. Seriously, read that again. It's not just some poetic thought. It's neurobiologically accurate. Every new experience, every thought, every piece of information you learn slightly changes the wiring in your brain. The story is constantly being revised with new data, which means you are a fundamentally different version of yourself from one moment to the next. And this process is happening incredibly fast. The you that started this explainer 5 minutes ago, well, that person had a slightly different brain than the you that exists right now. And in 5 more minutes, you'll be different again. You aren't just one entity moving through time. You're more like a series of psychologically distinct entities, all linked together by this one continuous story. So the crucial point, the big takeaway, is this. You are not a single, solid thing. Just let that sink in for a second. I know all of our instincts scream against it, but the evidence is really pointing in this direction. But, that doesn't have to be a scary thought, because the flip side is actually kind of beautiful. You are a constantly evolving story. This reframes the entire idea. It's not about a loss of self. It's about a gain of incredible dynamism and potential. At this point, you might be thinking, okay, that's a neat brain trick, but so what? Why does this matter in my daily life? Well, it matters profoundly, because this whole storytelling mechanism isn't a bug in the system. You could argue it's the most important feature of our minds. This narrative drive is absolutely essential. It creates that feeling of continuity, connecting our past, present, and future, so we don't feel like a total stranger in our own body every morning. And frankly, it keeps us sane. Without this internal story, the world would just be a chaotic, meaningless flood of raw data. Our storyteller is what gives our lives meaning, purpose, and structure. Which, of course, leads to a pretty crucial question. If our identity depends so much on this active, ongoing process, what happens if that storyteller in our brain just stops working? What happens if it fails? The answer is as simple as it is profound. The you that you perceive, it just vanishes. This really underscores that our identity isn't a passive state of being. It's an active creation. It has to be built, moment by moment, by that narrative center in our brain. And when the construction stops, so does the self. And that leaves us with one final provocative thought. Understanding this doesn't diminish you at all. It empowers you. Because if you accept that you are the story your brain tells itself, that you're not a fixed thing, but an evolving narrative, it raises the ultimate question. Who is writing the next page?